Racing and boxing are considered to be two of the most dangerous sports in history, with countless deaths and injuries. The fearful stories of the dedicated sportsmen continue to act as cautionary tales to all who compete. The sports may seem exhilarating and enticing, but let the tragedies of Thomas Pryce and Johnny Owen be a warning to anyone who may see these sports as anything but treacherous. Formula One cars are used in the highest class of international racing of open-wheel single-seater vehicles. They are one of the fastest, regulated, paved road racing cars in the world and can accelerate from 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. A season for Formula One racing consists of multiple races all over the world, traveling at dangerously high speeds, around 160 miles per hour, for anywhere between 190 to 370 miles. With those high speeds, drivers come face to face with death every time they get behind the wheel. It's been recorded that 52 Formula One drivers have died during their races, making it one of the most deadly sports known to man. Tom Pryce was one of those 52 drivers who lost their lives to the sport they loved. Pryce was born on June 11, 1949 in Wales to Jack and Gwyneth Pryce. His father served in the Royal Air Force as a tail gunner on a Lancaster bomber before joining the local police force. Tom's family had also suffered a great loss when their firstborn son, David, died unexpectedly at the age of 3. Tom's interest in cars began when he started running errands for a bakery, making deliveries in their van. He loved the feeling of being behind the wheel, the power he felt in every turn, and the speed as he pushed down on the gas pedal. It was shortly after he started driving for the bakery that he announced to his parents his dream. He wanted to become a race car driver. Although he had always shared that he wanted to be a pilot to follow in his dad's footsteps, he thought he didn't have the intelligence to fly planes. But he had the passion to race and to win. So he began to study racing, learning everything he could about the sport. He found his favorite racer to be Jim Clark, a British Formula One racing driver from Team Lotus, winner of 2 world championships. He embraced speed when he and his best friend, Trevor Williams, rode bicycles around the neighborhood. They would ride and race each other, finding the speed bumps to go over and the best hills to race up and down. As the boys got older, they got invested in everything about cars. They would study the mechanics of their vehicles and speed around the country roads. Williams started calling himself and Pryce the Naughty Boy Racers because they were always racing one another and learning as much about the sport as possible. When he was 16 years old, Tom Pryce dropped out of high school to pursue his career in racing. His parents were upset that he was no longer dedicated to his education and insisted that he accept an apprenticeship as a tractor mechanic at Landrolo Technical College, so he had a safe fallback. Although he wasn't happy about the compromise, he wanted to appease his mom and was still glad to have the opportunity to study the mechanics of different vehicles. And that's when he was finally able to dedicate his time to what he loved most, racing. In the early 1970s, he enrolled in the British Racing School, where retired F1 driver Trevor Taylor taught Pryce the details of racing. Tom's eyes lit up with every bit of information, every instruction, and the hope that this could be his future. Tom raced against other students in Lotus 51 Formula Ford cars in different circuits, covering the 35-pound charge every race. He sold his Mini, a car that he'd had for years to afford the races, and his parents gave him financial support for his dream too, and he persisted. He set up Motor Racing Stables, a competition series where the students in the British Racing School would race one another for a new Formula Ford Lola T200 worth over 15,000 pounds round after round. Tom earned his way, managing to beat the other students and make it to the final round, the Silverstone Circuit. Rain hit the pavement as the drivers started their engines and took deep breaths in. The flag waved in front of them and the students punched the gas, leaving the audience in the dust. Chris Smith led the way, racing around bends and up and down the hills in front of him. But Pryce wasn't far behind. Soon, his car inched up towards Smith's. The two were neck and neck before Pryce overtook him and flew through the finish line, winning himself the Lola T200. Over the next few years, Pryce quit his tractor career to focus on his racing. He entered a twin-seater race competition called Formula F100 that he won with, as he said, embarrassing ease. He quickly made his way up the racing ladder, competing and winning in Formula Super V and the Formula 3 races. In 1972, he took the first position in the final 3 rounds of the championship and won the final rounds at Brands Hatch. He continued racing in Formula Atlantic in 1973, winning 3 races and earning him the Grovewood Award for his incredible skills. But but Tom was convinced it would be a curse on his career. Pryce graduated to Formula One at the young age of 25, the highest circuit racing category, and was invited to join the newly formed Token Racing team. The recommendations from his school and mentor, David Tremaine, helped him receive a seat on the racing team because he was described as having evident promise. At the BRDC International Trophy, Pryce made his debut as an official Formula One racer. It was his time to show off what he was made of and the passion he had for the sport. But he was at a disadvantage compared to the other racers. His vehicle wasn't as updated as the other competitors, and his lack of experience made matters even worse. He came in last, the slowest driver out of the lot of 16 competitors. During the following few years of Formula One racing, Tom continued to improve his skills. He earned the first World Championship podium finish and went on to compete and win for many seasons. Until his final race. The Grand Prix began with the flash of black and white, and the cars fled from the starting line. Pryce raced by his competitors in his DNA, but was in last place by the end of the first lap. He'd had enough. He shifted gears and climbed up past the field during the next lap, and the next lap, and the next. He overtook Brett Lunger and Renzo Zorzi and Alex Ribeiro, all great competitors. And by lap 18, Pryce was in 13th place. 3 laps later, one of Pryce's competitors, Zorzi, was having trouble with his fuel meters. He pulled to the left side of the main route, just at the top of a hill near a bridge on the track. He immediately checked his meters, and the fuel was failing to pump both engines. And the smoke started. His engine caught fire, but Zorzi was stuck. He had to escape the car, and he couldn't disconnect the oxygen pipe from his helmet. 2 marshals, Bill and Fricky, raced over from the pit wall across the track carrying a 40-pound fire extinguisher. Bill made it to Zorzi, quickly and narrowly crossing the track, but Fricky was stuck as the racers zoomed by. When there was an opening, Fricky ran across to help. Along the main straight, Pryce was racing directly behind Stuck, another racer. Stuck saw one of the marshals and swerved to the right, missing them by only millimeters. Pryce, on the other hand, was not so quick. He couldn't see the marshals and didn't have enough time to react to Stuck. He struck Fricky Jansen Van Vuren at 170 miles per hour. The man was thrown into the air and landed a few yards in front of Zorzi's car. The young marshal died immediately, and his body was horribly mutilated by the impact of Pryce's car. Later on, the marshals couldn't identify his body because of his dismembered appearance, and they called over all the men in the crew to see who was missing to determine who had been killed. The fire extinguisher leaped from Fricky's hands when he was hit and flew towards Pryce, smashing his skull. His helmet gave him no protection, and with that velocity, the fire extinguisher hit him and he was killed almost instantaneously. The vehicle, even with Pryce dead at the wheel, continued barreling down the track towards the first corner. The car raced forwards, scraping against the metal barriers and rebounded back towards the center of the track, where it collided with another racer, Jock Lafayette's vehicle. Both vehicles barreled head-on towards the barriers, colliding in mere seconds. The race victor was announced shortly after, an Austrian named Niki Lauda, who was celebrating his first win since his near-death experience a year prior. But it didn't seem like much of a celebration. Although he was proud of the greatest victory in his career, while he was accepting his trophy on the victory podium, someone whispered in his ear that Pryce had experienced a horrible death during the race. He froze in shock and sadness, and later in his career shared that there was no joy after that. Boxing is one of the most dangerous sports. It's estimated that between 1890 and 2001, 1,604 boxers died as a direct result of injuries sustained in the ring. Johnny Owen was born on January 7, 1956 in Tidfull, England to Dick and Edith Owens, the fourth of 8 children. His parents were hard workers, raising the children and balancing non-stop hours of work, but they faced many struggles in their lives. Johnny's father, Dick Owens, worked as a miner for 13 years, barely making ends meet, and secured a job in a boot-making factory later in his life. His wife, Edith, suffered severe complications during the birth of their children and was hospitalized for a long while. Dick considered putting his children into government care so he could continue to work while his wife was sick, but the company he worked for was understanding of his needs and allowed him to cut down on his hours to take care of the kids. But Dick didn't do it alone. His children began helping out wherever they could, specifically Johnny. Johnny attended the local school and was often described as a sensitive, quiet soul, deeply in tune with the moods and needs of those close to him. His teachers and peers thought he was good-natured, quiet, and hardworking. By the time he was 7, he was grocery shopping alone for his family and helped his father as often as he could. His father later shared that, when the entire family came down with the flu, he fed them soup and made sure they all had medicine. He looked after them. Johnny Owen began his boxing career at the age of 8. Him and his siblings, Vivian and Kelvin, joined the Merthyr Amateur Boxing Club in 1962, where they learned the skills of the sport. By age 10, Owen was described to have some rudimentary ring craft and already had the boundless energy that would be his signature. His punches were light, but his effort was huge. He maintained the quality of his character, even in the ring. He was quiet and friendly and had to be convinced to use as much force as he could when he was boxing. But he quickly learned the strength he had in the ring and felt he could use the sport to his advantage in supporting his family. With the skills he learned and the potential he showed, Owen was able to travel throughout the country, boxing against other youths in Wales and England. Shortly after, Owen had gained the skills and recognition he needed to join the Hoover Amateur Boxing Club. He trained with Idris Sutton and learned the boxing styles of famous competitors, most specifically Eddie Thomas. His first major loss was to Charlie Magri, and Owen lost his momentum. He continued in school until he was 16 and tuned his attention to working a job in a nuts and bolts factory. But in his job, his stamina grew. He would run miles with his brother, Kelvin, and because he was enduring so much physical labor at his job, he became tough and strong. He felt he had the power to return to the ring. He represented Wales at amateur levels multiple times after that, drawing attention from the audience and praise from the local press. He defeated John Rayside in the second round during a match in Pontypool and, according to the press, reduced Rayside to helplessness with a non-stop two-fisted assault. The fight convinced the judges to choose Owen as the most impressive boxer that night. In February 1975, Owen was nicknamed Matchstick Man for his tall, thin frame, an unexpected look in a successful boxer. When he disrobed, the audience laughed and heckled him, but he quickly shut them up when, that night, he knocked out his opponent in the second round. He quickly became a crowd favorite. Owen, although still a reserved man, made his coach proud during each round in the ring. His strength shone with each jab and the swiftness of his movements. In his amateur career, Johnny Owen fought in 124 fights, winning 106 and losing a mere 18. On September 1st, 1976, Johnny Owen became a professional boxer. He was shown immense support from his family and coaches, but really wanted to be successful to help his family out of poverty. His former youth coach recalled that all Owen wanted was to fight and make money for his family. He wanted to buy them a house, but really, the reason he boxed was because he had to. Owen's debut match was thrilling. He felt exhilarated at the opportunity to show his skill and move up in the boxing world. It was neck and neck between Owen and a fellow Welshman, George Sutton, until one final knock came in, and Owen won by 1 point. Even as a professional boxer, Owen's demeanor never changed. He was dedicated to the sport, working longer and harder than any other boxer at the club, even the trainers. His main focus was on cardio, running between 9 to 12 miles every day to keep up his stamina. He never drank alcohol or engaged in romantic relationships, so his focus could remain solely on the sport and providing financial support for his family. Although he didn't have the knockout power of his opponents, he was quick and accurate in his punches and possessed the skills to become a world champion boxer. He was known for his sportsmanship in the ring. His trainer, Idris Sutton, described him as a real gentleman. I never saw him throw a foul punch or do anything dirty. If he saw his opponent slipping, he would stand back and give him a chance to get up. He would never look to take advantage of an accident. And if you beat him fair and square, he'd be the first to shake your hand. He was an honorable and determined boxer and went on to win 25 fights with only 1 loss, until his final day in the ring. Owen quickly became the European bantamweight champion and was scheduled to fight against the Mexican champion, Lupe Pinter, on September 19, 1980. The crowd rolled into the Grand Olympic Auditorium in Los Angeles, buzzing with anticipation and excitement. Although the arena's capacity was 10,000 people, boxer enthusiasts kept rolling in, even after the limit was exceeded, mostly there to support Pinter. The supporters of Owen were outnumbered 100 to 1. Their cheers were drowned out by the screams for the Mexican champion. The chants rang through the arena as both men hustled towards the ring, pumping their fists in the air in the excitement of the match. The men enter the box, stretching and jumping to prepare for the fight ahead. Owen glanced around at the crowds and the bell rang out. Although Owen was called the Matchstick Man, he surprised the crowd by making the first move on Pinter, aggressively pursuing him at every turn. With no clear victor in rounds 1 or 2, Owen's patience and strategy won him rounds 3 and 4, although Pinter's right hooks came in strong. Pinter's confidence weakened as he noticed that the win against Owen would not be as easy as he thought. His strong jabs were not enough to win the fight. The bell for round 5 rang out and Pinter went in for a powerful punch against Owen. Owen's lips started bleeding nonstop and he couldn't help but swallow blood for the rest of the fight. The doctor on site quickly examined his lip, but shouted that it wasn't reason enough to stop. For the next 3 rounds, Pinter's strength won out as Owen was weakening. He got in a few jabs to Pinter's eyes, but the two were judged to be almost neck and neck, with Owen having only a slight lead now. The bell for round 9 rang out, and Pinter pushed forward. His aggression was clear, as he continued punching Owen and knocked him down for the first time in his professional boxing career. But Owen wouldn't and couldn't stay down. He swiftly clambered to his feet and waved off the referee, convincing him that he was fine. But the momentum of the match had shifted. Pinter had the upper hand through the next 3 rounds. The 12th round is when it took a turn for the worst. And Pinter was off, like a horse out of the gate, wailing on Owen. Pinter wound up his arm and released a punch that knocked Owen down for a second time. He hastily got up again, determined to keep going, but with 25 seconds left, Pinter was ready to end it. His next right punch was too much for Owen, and on impact to his skull, Johnny Owen's pupils rolled up into his head, and he crumpled to the floor. The referee had enough. He called the fight then and there, without even counting Owen out because of the panic that set in for Owen's safety. The doctors rushed to his side, as Owen began to convulse and his mouth continued bleeding. The audience was too engrossed by Pinter's great victory to care about Owen's suffering. Instead, they decided to mock Owen and throw food and beer cans into the ring. Owen's limp body was immediately carried out of the arena on a stretcher and taken to the local hospital. He was given a bed and taken into surgery right away. The doctors found and removed a blood clot in his brain, a result of the multiple hits to the head. A day later, Johnny Owen's mother arrived in the United States, followed by over 100 phone calls and telegrams from fans and loved ones wishing him a quick recovery. But the thoughtful wishes fell on deaf ears. Owen's neurosurgeon shared later that Owen's delicate skull and strong jaw had absorbed Pinter's final punch and pushed the jawbone through Owen's skull and into his brain. The damage was irreversible. It was only a matter of time before this fight would be considered Owen's last. He underwent a second operation with hopes of relieving pressure in his brain, but it had failed, and Owen soon after contracted a serious bout of pneumonia. He underwent a third and final surgery after the pneumonia passed, and the doctor thought he might be improving after the operation was successfully completed. But the pneumonia returned, worse than before, and on November 4th, almost 2 months after the fight, Johnny Owens passed away at the age of 24, with his parents mourning at his side. The service for Owen was held at Merthyr Parish Church in Wales, at his parents' request. He was visited by over 1,000 people during the funeral, and 4,000 people gathered outside the church doors, listening to the kind words of loved ones over a loudspeaker. The Times reported that the entire town of Merthyr closed on the day of his funeral. Upon hearing of Owen's death, Lupe Pintor was destroyed with the guilt he felt and considered retiring from boxing completely. When the Owens family heard of this, they reached out to Pintor directly, sharing that they did not blame Lupe for Johnny's death and encouraged him to continue boxing. Owen's surgeries cost $94,000, which was over 3 times the cost of the insurance payout. The remaining medical bills were paid out by public appeal that had raised over $128,000 for Owen. His family decided to donate the remaining money to charity, as Owen had provided them enough money in his death, and leaving them almost $60,000. Although the fight between Lupe Pintor and Johnny Owen had led to his tragic death, Owen was able to accomplish all he'd wanted in his boxing career by bringing pride to his family and supporting them in ways he never thought possible. Thanks for watching Fear Frontier. If you would like to see more content like this, please see our latest video in the series, Awful Deaths from Animals. Please like, subscribe, and comment below if you have any stories you want us to cover.